Anyway, one day this guy came into our classroom. I was 10, I think, and I chatted to him for a bit. A guy in his 40s, I should think. But we got visitors often coming in at the classroom, you know. So we chatted for a bit, and he went and spoke to my teacher, and then he went to see the head teacher. Evidently, I didn't know. But a few days later, I was asked to go and see the head teacher, and I went. And this guy was sitting there with him. It turned out to be the inspector for special education for Liverpool. His name was Charles Strafford. He became a big family friend. He was a wonderful guy. Very kind of refined and distinguished, and he'd been a captain in the army during the Normandy landings and had a place in France. And I went to stay with him a few times actually, and he introduced me to salad. And I'm talking about the sort of salad we used to have at school, you know, horrible limp stuff, you know, with salad dressing on it and a half a boiled egg. I mean, like salad that the French would eat, you know, with dressing on it. And so anyway, back at the school at the age of 10, they arranged for me to have some tests, which I now assume were like IQ tests. And I took them, and they moved me up a couple of classes and put me in with a different teacher. And she coached me for this public exam we used to have in England called the 11 Plus. You know, this is an exam you took at the age of 11. It determined whether you went to what were called grammar schools or secondary modern schools. And so I took this test, and I passed it. I was the first person in the school ever to pass it, because I'd been coached, by the way. And I went into the public school system after that. I went into this grammar school, and I was off at that point. You know, it was a school I'd often driven past or on the bus when I was a kid. It was like a big tessellated Victorian building in the centre of Liverpool called the Collegiate. And I used to see these kids streaming in and out. It's like Tom Brown's school days, you know, in uniforms with satchels, and it looked to me like it was like a dreamy place to me. It looked great, and I went there. And I ended up doing Latin and French and all that stuff, and you know, I was kind of on my way at that point. But if that teacher hadn't come into my life, and if Charles Strafford hadn't walked in the room and taken an interest in me, I don't know what I'd be doing now. I really don't. So, you know, the fact, to me, it speaks to two things. One is that you need other people in your life. You need mentors to come along. Because very often mentors see things in you that you don't see in yourself. You know, they can see a potential you have that you may be taking for granted because it's just you. You know, think, well, if I can do that, presumably anybody can do that, because people on the whole tend not to take their own talents seriously. But it also speaks to the fact that we do have much more potential than we imagine. I mean, if I hadn't got polio when I was 4, I'd have probably gone on to a secondary modern school. I'd have probably gone into play soccer quite a bit. I might have made the team. In fact, my young brother Neil did make the team and became a first division football player who's in the Premier League. But I might have done that, and if I'd done that, I'd probably be running a sports bar in Brooklyn now. You know, I'd be showing people my medals. You know, I don't know what I would have done, but it wouldn't have been this, because this wouldn't have occurred to me. A life in education. I was the first person in my family to go to college. It just wasn't in the culture. It wasn't what you did. You know, and so it isn't probably what I would have done. I don't know, but you know, so to me, it's about, you know, I mean, the big theme it illustrates to me is that creativity isn't some special capacity that a few isolated geniuses have, that being creative is part of being human. And the biggest evidence of it is that you create your own life. Everybody's life is different, and it's what you created. You created it by your choices, by your confidence or your lack of it, by your response to circumstances. It's a constant process of improvisation between your circumstances and your disposition and your talents. And if you create it, you can recreate it. If you don't like it, you can create another one. It's not quite as easy as that, I'm not saying it's, but I just published a book about this called Finding Your Element, about how that process can work. I don't mean you could just walk out on everything, but nobody else in the history of humanity has had your life, and nobody else ever will. So you're responsible for it to a very large degree, and you can recreate it. And I think we have lots of potential lives inside of us, and education should help us discover them. And too often really what it does is help people discover things they don't want to do rather than help them discover things that they could do.